prayer again tonight to study another portion of God's Word. Last week we began a study in relationships. How do you handle relationships? I mentioned that this would be the last topic in this series, and I saved it for last because it was the one that was most requested in the survey sheets that were handed out. It's the one that has most issues that people wrote in about, and it's the one that's going to take the most time. So, as the old saying goes, save the best for last. So last week we began by talking about the fallout. I began this study of relationships by discussing the fallout, the consequences of what happens, what shape the world is in, and what role the enemy has played in causing havoc and wreaking havoc in the world because we have not followed God's divine design for relationships. God created relationships. He created us for relationships. And He has laid out the pattern, He has laid out the design for us to have successful relationships. And we're going to look at that on tonight. The statistics that I gave you last week were statistics that were just for this country. All the stats that were on the screen, all of the number of homeless, fatherless children that are in the world, how many men and women are incarcerated in jails, all those statistics were for this country. Those stats are multiplied around the world because those kinds of things are happening around the whole world. And whether or not you agree with the legitimacy or the accuracy of the statistics, whether you view the cup as half full or half empty, it's still a half cup. The numbers that we gave last week still demonstrate the fact that there are people in this world, there are children in this world who live in fatherless homes. There are still a lot of people incarcerated and thus out of the home. And as a result of that, Satan has wreaked havoc on the home. And so we're going to talk about these things tonight. We're going to look at the big picture. I said that our objective in this class was not so much to focus on the psychological issues of relationships. The world is filled with relationship experts who focus on the psychological aspects of relationships. And we're going to talk about that too. But I want to go deeper than that. I want to look at the bigger picture. I want to look at the fact that the reason why we have relationship issues is because the enemy, the Satan, the devil, has been successful to some extent at undermining God's design for relationship. And because of man's failure to comply with God's design for relationship, the things that we discussed last week are the consequences of that. And so tonight, we're going to look at the big picture. Just as the enemy deceived Eve into believing that there was a better way, when he deceived her into eating of the forbidden fruit, and he deceived her mind into believing that if she ate that fruit, something better than what God told her was going to happen. That's what he's done in this world in terms of relationships. He has deceived people into believing that their way, or any way outside of God's way, is a better way. He tried that same tactic with Jesus, but he wasn't successful at it. So the only way that we can successfully and effectively study this topic is if we view it from the standpoint of looking at the objective standard, and that's God's Word. Isn't that right? Get someone to pass out these handouts. That's just the same thing. Now, let me just say before we get into this, in case I don't have an opportunity to say it on the back end, next week we're going to look at the relationship, God's pattern for the relationships in the home. We're going to look at the husband's role, the wife's role, the children's role in the home. And if we have time, we're going to talk about relationships in the church, because God has laid out how we should deal with one another in the church. And I'm going to show you that the church is comprised of some characters. We have a variety of personalities in the church. But Jesus modeled how to deal with that. I'm going to show you, we're going to look at the composition of the Lord's apostles. When you look at the composition of the different characters and personalities contained in the Lord's apostles, you're going to see that there was some people in there who, outside of their relationship with Christ, would not have been able to get along. And I'm going to demonstrate to you from that just as the church is comprised of all kinds of people with all kinds of personalities, God has laid a pattern down for us that we can get along even when our personalities conflict. All right? In fact, it is one of the things that identifies us as different from the world, our ability to be unified and to love one another. That is demanded of every disciple of Christ. Does everyone have a hand up? Okay. Relationships, the divine pattern. Mr. Webster defined the relationship as a connection, association, or involvement in emotional or other connection between people. The divine pattern. God ordained relationships. He created mankind to have a relationship with his creator, with himself, with his fellow man, with his environment, and with the animal kingdom. Let me read to you Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 28. Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 28. Now this is as the Lord has created the heaven and the earth. He says in verse 26, and God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he them. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowls of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. God ordained mankind to have dominion over this earth. He ordained our relationship with the environment. He ordained our relationship with the animal kingdom. He ordained our relationship with himself and with each other. Notice in this text that I just read, it says that he gave them dominion. James Brown in his song, It's a Man's World. I'm glad he put that part, but it wouldn't be nothing without a woman or girl. God knew that. God gave dominion of this earth to mankind, man and woman. Now, man had the lead role, and we get to that later. Y'all nudging each other. Y'all must have talked about that at some point. All right. Number 2, our existence on this planet is based upon a series of relationships. Our eternal destiny is determined by relationships. Matthew chapter 7, verse 21, beginning when Jesus was concluding his Sermon on the Mount. He said, not everyone that saith to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father, which is in heaven. Many will say unto me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied? Have we not done many wonderful works? Then I will confess unto you, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. We have to have a relationship with Jesus. Our eternal destiny is connected to our relationship with him. Isn't that right? And then Matthew chapter 25, you remember the parable of the sheep and the goat, when he was talking about those who were on the left-hand side because they saw their fellow man hungry, didn't feed him. Saw them naked, didn't give them clothes, saw them in need, didn't do anything about it. But those that were on the right were going into heaven because they did something about it. In other words, they had a relationship with people. They recognized their relationship with people, and they took care of their relationship. Right? The great commandment. Someone did that for me. Matthew chapter 22, verses 37 through 40. Involves relationship. Someone asked Jesus, what is the great commandments? And Jesus gave an answer to that. And the answer involved relationships. Who has it? Who's going to read it? Matthew 22, verses 37 through 40.
And he said unto him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the whole law and the prophets.
Thank you. What are the relationships that are described in that? What are the relationships that he described in the Great Commandment? He said you should love who? God. With all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. Who else?
Yourself and your neighbor.
Huh?
And what God loves.
Love yourself, but also he said love your neighbor. Right? As yourself. Right? Now, what happens if you don't love yourself?
It's kind of hard to love.
You won't have it to love a neighbor, right? And you probably won't love God. And that's why I added self to the list. Last week I didn't mention about our relationship with self, but I thought about it during the week. And a lot of people have bad relationships with themselves. And because a lot of people have issues with themselves, it causes issues with everyone else. Isn't that right?
Amen.
Note, before God created man, he created the environment man needed to sustain him and provisions for him. This is in Genesis chapter 2. God gave man a home. He gave him a job, he gave him instructions, and he gave him a wife, according to Genesis chapter 2, verses 15 through 23. And I thought about that. Every man, before he takes a wife, should have a job, he should have a home, doesn't have to own the house, but he should have a roof. Isn't that right? In other words, he should have an environment to bring his wife into. Isn't that right?
Amen.
Problem with today is we got too many men living in the mama basement, driving mama car. Isn't that right? And then want to take a woman, take a wife, and bring her into that chaos. God's pattern is you create the environment, then you bring her into it. That's what he did to man. Isn't that right? All right. Let's look at some divine principles. Divine principle, number one. Where's my eraser? There are some divine principles set by God to ensure the natural order of things and the safety and security of man. I want to read something to you. Genesis chapter 1. Let me show you some principles that God set up. This is the natural order of things. Genesis chapter 1, beginning with verse number 11. And this is God as he is creating the heavens and the earth. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, and herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding after his kind. Underline that. Whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. Verse 12. And earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. Drop down to verse 21. And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. Verse 22. And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. Verse 24. And God said, Let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping things, and the beasts of the earth after his kind. And God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and the cattle after his kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. Here's the principle. The principle is in verse number 11, where he's talking about the seed being in itself. God has a principle in the natural realm where seed only produces after its kind. Here's what that means. If I took a corn seed and I planted it, what am I going to grow? I can plant it in Houston, I can plant it in Chicago, I can plant it in California, I can plant it in Russia. The principle is that the life is in the seed, and that seed produces after its kind. Isn't that right? That's God's natural order. Now, why are you telling me all these things, brother teacher? Because man's relationship with the environment is contingent upon him following that natural order. Here's the problem. Man has come along and has tampered with God's natural order. And as a result of it, our relationship with the environment has been affected. Man has tried to cross-match species. The order is this. It's called mutation, changes within a given species. You can have changes within a given species, but there's a thing called transmutation where you try and mix or cross two different species. That goes against God's natural order. That's why I know that the theory of evolution is not correct, because the scripture said that animals produce after their kind. Isn't that right? The theory of evolution said that man evolved from a different species. It ain't. According to the scriptures, that is not possible. Man, however, has attempted to create life in a test tube. That goes against God's natural order. How many of you are familiar with the term GMO? How many know what GMO is? What is a GMO, Diane?
Genetically modified.
Genetically modified organisms, right? There's a thing in the health realm right now that affects everyone in this room. The big news these days is that scientists have genetically tampered with corn, soy, different crops, different things that we eat. And because they had tampered with the DNA and tried to genetically modify these things, the result of that is a lot of illnesses and sickness that we suffer with today. You see how important our comply with God's pattern, even in terms of our relationship with the environment, is? We have done so many things to the environment And this earth is crying, and we are paying for it. A lot of illnesses today are the result of the foods that we eat. Because a lot of the foods that we eat, especially those foods that are preserved, that are canned, that are frozen, a lot of these things have been genetically modified in violation of God's natural order. And as a result of that, we have a lot of health issues. You ever wonder why you have a hospital on almost every other corner, a health facility? You ever wonder why you have so many issues? Get down to like someone.
You got one.
The reason why we have so many hospitals all over the city of Houston is because there are a lot of sick people in this city. And that's just in this city. Multiply that in the country, multiply that in the world. There are a lot of sick people in the world. And a lot of it is because our relationship with the environment have been affected by the things that man has done. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 29, God says, "This I know, that I created man, and God created man upright, but he has sought out many inventions." We are the product of a lot of inventions that we have tried to create that goes contrary to the divine order. Go ahead, Steve.
I was just gonna say that it was either in Congress or here in
Hold on,
Texas.
Mike, to you.
Oh, it was either in Congress or here in Texas that the legislators had a bill to identify which products had been genetically modified, and they refused to pass it. We would have been able to identify what products are being modified on the boxes or the labels or whatever, but they voted it down. And that's because they have them in their pockets really, really deep.
Let me read this little clip for you. This is an article from a paper a magazine that I read, talking about genetically modified foods. Let me just read this one paragraph. In 2011, the United States farmers planted more than 170 million acres of genetically engineered crops, such as corn, soybeans, canola, and sugar beets, which made their way into 70% of the processed foods we eat. A lot of stuff that we eat, brothers and sisters, has been tampered with. And as a result of it, a lot of health issues. Myself, personally, between October and December 2012, I made 4 trips to the emergency room because I broke out and looked like the Elephant Man. I had a food allergy, a reaction to food. And when I finally did the research and found out it was traced to stuff, my body was reacting to stuff that I was eating. And a lot of people, brothers and sisters, have issues, health issues, that are traced to stuff that we eat. Now, let me get off the environment for a little while, because I want to get to y'all. Oh, incidentally, this article talks about the weather in the United States. The United States has the most extreme weather in the world. And it's because a lot of stuff that we're doing in the United States is affecting the environment. And the earth is responding to that. And we are paying for it. All right? Now, enough of that. Let's get to y'all. Turn your handouts over. Talk about relationships 101. Ingredients for healthy relationships. Someone get for me Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 through 27. Number 1, the essential element for any relationship is the foundation upon which it is built. That applies to any relationship. That applies to interpersonal relationships, that applies to our spiritual relationships, that applies to our relationship with the environment, and it applies in business relationships across the board. A relationship is only as solid as the foundation on which it is built. Jesus gave a principle. Who's going to read it?
Jeopardize.
You want me to read it out there, Bob?
Matthew 7, verses 24 through 27. This is Jesus concluding the Sermon on the Mount. Go ahead, sister.
Anyone who listens to my teachings and obeys me is wise, like a person who builds a house on solid rock. Though the rain comes in torrents and the floodwaters rise and the wind beats against that house, it won't collapse because it is built on rock. But anyone who hears my teaching and ignores it is foolish, like a person who builds a house on sand. When the rain and the floods come and the winds beat against the house, it will fall with a mighty crash.
Thank you. Now, Jesus says this at the conclusion of the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount is comprised of Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7. And in those 3 chapters, Jesus gives us principles about life. He teaches the Beatitudes. He tells us what our attitude should be, how we should treat one another, how we should treat our enemies, how we should, pray, how we should give. He talked about all of these principles in these 3 chapters. And then he says at the end of it, if you hear my words and do it, these things that he talked about, it is equivalent to a man building his house upon a solid foundation of rock. If you hear these things, these sayings of mine, and you do not do them, it's equivalent to building your life upon a sandy foundation. And you notice he says, the winds came, the rains, ascended, the winds blew, right, and beat upon it, but it didn't fall. Why? Because it's built upon a solid foundation. In every relationship, brothers and sisters, you will have storms. But whether or not that relationship withstands the storm, it depends upon the solid foundation upon which it's built. Now, what is the problem? Y'all told me last week, when I asked y'all what some of the issues that people have in relationships, look at the note. Many relationships are built upon a shaky foundation. That is, lies. Y'all put that on the list last week. Distrust. Y'all put that on the list last week. Isn't that right? Fear, etc. And thus vulnerable to the storms of life and the attacks of the enemy. How many of y'all have ever got into a relationship with somebody and it started off with a lie? You meet somebody and say, how old are you? Oh, I'm 22. You're really 18. Starting off wrong. Isn't that right? What you do? Oh, I work, I drive trucks. No, you don't. You live in your mama's basement and you don't do nothing. A lot of relationships start off with lies. It starts off with a shaky foundation. It's going to have enough issues. Isn't that right? It's going to be tested. It's going to be tried, but if it's built upon a good foundation, it'll withstand the storm. Number 2, all relationships will have storms, but the foundation will determine whether or not they can withstand those storms. Let me just say this, brothers and sisters, invest in the foundation. Wisest thing you can do. In any relationship, interpersonal, if you're going into business, whatever the relationship is, invest in the foundation. I'm from New Orleans, and New Orleans is mostly marshland. And whenever they build a house from scratch in Orleans, they always drive pilings down into the ground. And the reason why they drive the pilings down in the ground before they lay the slab is because the ground is shaky, it's shifty. And so the pilings will keep the foundation steady, keep it from shifting, keep it from cracking. Isn't that right? And even here I've seen piling driven. Take the time to drive some piling. And that's the most annoying sound. I hate the sound of it. All day long you're driving the piling. But it's a good thing. Because if you didn't have it, you'd have problems with the foundation. And no matter how elaborate the structure, if the foundation is bad, you have problems. Isn't that right? So invest in foundations. Keys to healthy relationships. Number one, honesty. Honesty is the ability to be totally open and upfront about yourself. As Arthur said, be naked. To be, and the president said, to be totally transparent. It all means the same thing. To be totally open and honest about yourself. How many of y'all have had issues with doing that at the beginning of a relationship? I have. And I see nobody else gonna raise their hand. Brothers and sisters, it always comes out. Isn't that right? It always comes out. Honesty is crucial in a relationship. And let me just throw this out while I'm asking somebody. Don't ask me a question if you don't want to know the answer. Because a lot of people do that. A lot of people ask a question they really don't want that, an honest answer to it, huh? Babe, I look fat this dress. Don't ask me that if you really don't want to know the answer. I'm not talking about my wife, but that's what people do. They'll ask a question, but they really don't want an honest answer. Be honest. Number two, communication. Communication is the ability to openly relay your thoughts, feelings, and ideas to one another. Openly relay your thoughts, feelings, and ideas to one another. People can't read your mind. And communication is a big problem in actually all relationships. Where there's a breakdown in communication, where there's miscommunication or non-communication, you will have problems. Don't ever assume you know what another person is thinking. Open your mouth. Speak up. If you have an issue with something, if you disagree with something, you don't like something, open your mouth and say it. Just be kind, But open your mouth because people can't read your mind. Go ahead.
On that communication,
Speak right to the mic.
on that communication, because of past experience and stuff that can happen, people have the tendencies of holding back their feelings or they deep down secret that's going on within themselves.
I'm glad you said that. One of the issues that you have in relationships, especially at the beginning of the relationship, when two people come into a relationship for the first time, both of them dragging an invisible wagon full of emotional baggage from past relationships, from past life experiences, from past issues, and they bring that stuff into the relationship. Example, if you were a person and the person you were with before was unfaithful to you, so now you have an issue with trust, and you get into a new relationship and you bring that distrust, that suspicious mind into the new relationship. And so the new person, I'm going out to the store, get a loaf of bread. And you stalking them, while you tracking the GPSing them and all this stuff because you don't trust them because somebody else did something to you in a past relationship and you transferring it into your present relationship. Brothers and sisters, that's common. A lot of people bring a lot of emotional baggage such as fear, anger, resentment, insecurity. They bring all this emotional baggage into relationships. And then when you get into the relationship, then the other person's like, where is this coming from? That's why, honestly, if you have trust issues, you need to tell that person that you have issues and let that person work, to earn your trust. But if they don't know that you have these issues and you treat them, you stalking them and you're doing all this stuff based on previous relationships, they're going to think you're crazy. And they're not going to want anything to do with you.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
3, compassion. Keys to healthy relationships. The ability to demonstrate care, concern, and respect for one another. Compassion is defined as, it's a compound word. Passion means, pain, and calm means with. So compassion means the ability to suffer with is what it means. And you remember how many times we read in Scripture where the Bible says that when Jesus saw someone, in need or in pain, he had compassion upon them. He was moved with compassion upon them. He felt that pain. And that's one of the things that we have to do, even in relationships. Because compassion is the fuel that motivates action.
Amen.
If there is no compassion, if you can look at a situation or a person struggling and you don't feel anything about it, you won't be motivated to do anything about it. Isn't that right?
So true.
And compassion is something that we must have in relationships. Because there are going to be times when you need to be compassionate. You may not understand it, it may not be where you are, you may not know where the person is coming from, but having compassion with that person goes a long way in a relationship. And one more thing about compassion and storms in relationships. Fight fair. Fight fair. Isn't that right? Don't bring, well, no, that don't apply. But fight fair. I was going to say don't bring a knife to a gunfight, but that don't apply.
Wait a minute, Sister Strange.
What do voice is a good example of why we need God in our life. So he can guide us to be able to see that this person is not that other person. And to be able to build on relationships. When I counsel with couples going through situations of preparing to be married, that's what courtship is all about. They give you time to talk things out. And never, never, never look at a situation and say, he's a good guy, she's a good little girl, I'm going to go ahead on and look over all of them faults. Because faults have a way like a slow pot boiling, and when you know anything, it can be all out of control.
Yeah.
When my husband met, see, he had been married, I had been married. And when he met me, and we began to talk, he said, you either what you say you is a Christian or you crazy. I'm trying to decide which one.
Which one of these? Just
Maybe you're a crazy Christian.
got a hand back here.
You said a word that I want to give Ashley a mic. You said a word, sister. Okay, hold on one second. You said a word that I hadn't heard this word in a long time. Courtship. I mean, you know what courtship is.
Old school.
Yeah. This is something that's not done too much today, which is part of the reason why the divorce rate is 50%. Because too many people rush into relationships without taking the time to lay that foundation. A lot of people rush into marriage today for the wrong reason. I like the way they look, like the way they talk, like the job they have, all these things. superficial things. And then without laying the foundation that's needed, without taking the time to see how this person deals with the issues of life, how this person interacts with me when we have disagreements, when we fall out about stuff. And then they'll rush into it, and the next thing you know, they're on divorce court. I have filmed weddings. I filmed a wedding one time where the couple spent tens of thousands of dollars on the wedding ceremony. They were divorced before they celebrated their first anniversary. They invested a lot of time in the wedding, but they didn't invest enough time in the marriage. And as a result of it, and that is very common in this society. Go ahead, Ash.
My question is brief. I just wanted to know, when you mentioned fight fair, I just wanted to understand from a group perspective, what is fighting fair?
What is fighting fair? When you, naturally, when you have two people in a relationship, leave all of that. When you have two people in a relationship come together, you have two sets of, ideas, visions of how things should go. Sometimes, your thoughts about how to handle a situation may not be the same as your husband. And so you clash on these things. And that's natural, that's normal. Because it's two individual people coming together, looking at it from two different points of view. When I say fight fair is, don't tear him down because he doesn't see the way you see it. Don't attack his manhood, don't talk about his mama, don't just get crazy just because he doesn't see it the way you do. People do that. That's what I mean by fighting fair. And that goes back with having compassion. Don't go for the jugular just because you have a disagreement about something. That's why a lot of people end up in divorce court, because they go for the jugular behind some minor stuff. You burn, the spaghetti sauce, and now you're getting a divorce over that. That's not anything to fall out over. Some people do that. All right? So when I say fight fair, I mean, you can disagree, you can have your dispute, but don't take it too far. Don't tear the person down, don't, deride his character and all this kind of stuff over something that's simple. All right? We live in a society where people just blow stuff out of proportion. All right? Number 4, keys to healthy relationships. Commitment. Commitment is the ability to stick with a situation, a relationship, when the storms of life come. That goes back to the foundation. A lot of relationships are developed too fast before the foundation is developed and established. And when the storms come, they fall out. All right? Jesus put it another way when he taught the parable of the sower. He said the parable of the sower went forth to sow, and it fell upon, some fell upon stony ground, some fell upon thorny ground, some fell upon good ground, some fell by the wayside. It was the same seed that was planted on 4 different soils. And the response to the seed was determined by the condition of the soil. When he gave the explanation for that, he said that some fell by the wayside and the soil represents the heart, the person's heart. The seed that fell by the wayside was on a person whose heart was so hard that the seed couldn't penetrate. The soil that fell upon the stony ground was seed that didn't have any deepness to the earth. It was shallow, it didn't have deepness in the earth, so the word couldn't get in there and penetrate, take root, and grow. The seed that fell upon thorny ground was ground that was full of weeds and had too much stuff going on, and it choked out the word, it couldn't produce fruit. The seed that fell upon good ground fell upon, the heart that was honest and so it produced fruit. My point is this: same seed, 4 different soils. And the condition of the soil determines the response to the seed. So it is in relationships. It's the same principle. All right? Commitment. The ability to stick with it. What we have today too much of is too many people giving up too quickly. Not only in marriage relationships, business relationships, a lot of people give up on God quickly. A lot of people give up too quickly these days. No, upon these 4 principles rests the secret to a healthy and successful relationship. Now, just for a few moments, let's talk about marriage. And we'll finish this next week. Key ingredients for successful marital relationships. Some get from Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. I'll read the principle. Genesis 2:24. Quickly. Go ahead.
Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother, and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. They were both naked.
Okay, thank you. First key ingredient to successful marital relationship is that you must leave and cleave. Look at the note. To leave father and mother literally means to cut the apron string. To not allow outside influences to affect your marital relationship. To cleave means to be glued together. The marital relationship should be the strongest and closest relationship you have aside from your relationship with God. Being one flesh means, in addition to the sexual union, united in purpose and direction. What is the problem in a lot of marriages today? Right here. A lot of people haven't cut the apron string. A lot of guys and girls still attached at the hip to mama and daddy. Cause for a lot of marital discord in the world today is because of outside influences. You have a disagreement with your husband, your wife, you call mama, daddy, say, oh, and it's all right to get advice, but you should work it out with your spouse. And I have seen so many relationships have big trouble because of the influence of mom and daddy and others in their relationship. Isn't that right? Y'all quiet on that. Go ahead, brother. Give me my mic.
I was going to say initially, also goes back to the beginning where we talk about the keys to a relationship. Because if you go through that first, you don't really have to worry about that mother and father aspect in the end. Because just like, it's been some relationships that have been hurt because of outside influence, I've also seen relationships that have been helped because of outside influences. Because maybe they go to people that have been married longer than them and they can tell them how to better deal with some of the issues that they're going to face. Mm-hmm. So I believe initially, what I did before I got married is that when we were talking, I said, what is your idea of marriage? Mm-hmm. Because I knew the background that I came from, and initially we bumped heads. And I told her, it's like, and these were my exact words, I said, maybe you can see or be the person that I'm trying to make you be or want you to be, because we both were seeing two different things. So if you come together on that same page, and after that, it really doesn't, the mother and father aspect really doesn't matter as much, because you got down to the courtship part or the dating part first. And I think that's the most important part, because that's like preventative maintenance. Mm-hmm. Because you don't have as many issues with the marriage part. I mean, you're going to have issues no matter what. Right. But if you come on the same ground, it's like how you're going to deal with issues, and that'll help you in the marriage part.
Mm-hmm. And I agree 100%. One of the problems that people have is that they don't take that time. As you said, you talk, you communicate, and you ask her what was her idea of marriage. I've known people to do that. I know one guy asked a woman, do you believe, that a wife should be submissive to her husband? And And she said, I've been independent all my life. I ain't about to be submissive to no man. Well, that wasn't the one for him. You know, scratch that one off the list. But communication is key. Problem is, a lot of people will get involved with somebody based on, how they look, what they do, how they act, and all this kind of stuff. Know that they're not right for them, for their personality. But how many times have you heard people say, I thought he would change, or, I thought I could change him. You can't change anybody. You cannot change anybody.
I ain't trying to get him to change, I'm just trying to get him to see it my way.
Yeah. It's just, I'm sure our time gone already. Go ahead, sister.
You're right. The man is supposed to leave and cleave and not let in-laws, like mother-in-law, because there was an issue where a gentleman said that his mother came to visit, and she said that she needed them, the couple, to leave their bedroom door open in case she had a heart attack or something. And he had to go. He said he found it difficult, but he eventually told his mother that he was going to have to close the bedroom door. But she wanted the bedroom door to stay open just in case something happened to her.
If that bedroom door open, she liable to be the one there. No, but here's the thing. Here's the deal, brothers and sisters. In every relationship, it's specific to that relationship. Every husband and wife set the ground rules for their relationship. And you don't let someone from the outside, whether it's an in-law or anyone else, come in and dictate the rule in your house. And that's part of the problem. A lot of people have allowed outside influences, not just in-law, but friends and girlfriends and the boys and all these things coming in. Well, I wouldn't do that. You ought to do this. You ought to do that. You need to communicate with your husband and wife and work it out. And that's why I said last week. Remember, I said when Sister Strange brought up the idea about sometimes children witness arguments in the home, and I said sometimes it's good for a child to witness that when the parents work it out, when they fight fairly, they're not cutting each other up. I want the children to see parents disagree, but then I want to see them work it out. That way the children have a model as to, how to handle a dispute in a relationship, because you will have disputes, you will have disagreements. And you need to know, you need to have a positive model as to how to work it out. Go ahead, bro.
Sometimes the kids learn how to respect the mom and dad's covenant, and they won't get in grown folks' business. But sometimes we don't respect another person's covenant. If we have two people that's just fine, they cut each other up, they laugh at each other, they might play this way, and because you and your husband or your wife don't play that way, they have a covenant. And you have to respect that covenant. Because there are some people that are like mud and Jeff, they're like oil and water, but they get along and they're happy. But because they don't do things the way you do, or they ain't happy, y'all shouldn't do this, y'all shouldn't do that. So sometimes we need to stay out of a relationship, and the mother and father need to stay out, just like they need to leave and clean.
And like I said, every household, every household should set the rule, the groundwork for their household. Each household is different. What works in your household may not work in my household. But in the words of Martin, respect my house. When you come to my house, you need to respect the rules of my house. But your rules need to be subordinate and in line with God's pattern. All right? Next week, we're going to talk about relationships between husband and wife, God's divine pattern for the home. Husband role, wife role, children role. and we're gonna talk about relationships within the Lord's church. All right.
I want to thank Mike for his lesson